Hi. So today is Bell Let's Talk Day, which is January 27th. Um, and for those of you that don't know, basically today is all about raising awareness for mental health. That can be a number of things, um, but it's to ensure that people are still talking about it, that people aren't going to be suffering in silence, essentially. And they also help to raise money for help phones and, more services towards that, which is wonderful. And I've wanted to bring my personal story to the forefront for a while, but it's personal, right? And sometimes you don't necessarily want to talk about it, and it hasn't been something I've talked about to anyone about, really, aside from my family and one of my closest friends. But I think it's good to make people aware of what happens. So, my name is Caitlin. I'm 22 and I've had depression for over a decade. It's 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 hard to talk about, but it's also something that you always want to talk about. You know, even when you're in your darkest hours, you always feel like you're alone. And obviously, considering the statistics out there, you're not. But it's a matter of not wanting to burden people, not wanting to make yourself look weak, not wanting to. For me, I felt like if I told people how I was feeling or the fact that I was depressed or a numerous amount of things, it would be that they would take pity on me. And I didn't want pity, I just wanted someone to talk to, which is two very different things. Um, it's also, for me personally, it's also a sense of not wanting people to worry. But that's what people are going to do. I mean, even to this day for myself, if my friends came up to me and said, I need to talk to you, I've been depressed for a while, instantly you're going to worry. It's just human nature. But it's not always that simple. For me, my depression started at age 11, which, now that I think about it, is kind of horrifying. I was 11 years old and I was in elementary school. For the majority of my life, I have been relentlessly bullied. It's hard to talk about even now. When you're a little girl and you're growing up, you don't think about how you look necessarily until someone points it out. And growing up, for a while, I was a little girl. It's not necessarily normal for little girls to be large or considered fat. But as time went on, by the time I was 11 or so, I was a little bit bigger. I was also shorter. The girls in my school were always thinner than me. Always. And I have nothing against that at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that when you're a growing girl and you're not really thinking about things like this, but then you start hearing things on the playground or, people straight up say it to your face that, oh, you're looking a little fat, maybe you should lose some weight. It's hard. It's incredibly hard. And I was teased and I was bullied and it was made out to be this horrible thing. And it's not. And the worst part about it is that looking back at it now, I was 11 years old when this started. At 11 years old, it's not like you're weighing 150 pounds. You're 11. But it was, oh, well, you're bigger than most girls. And to be fair, that was true. I developed early. All around. So it was just, for me, it was my life. That's who I was. It wasn't like, oh, I'm abnormally obese at 11 years old. It's you don't think like that when you're 11. So to have people that you thought were your friends start saying these really rude things, it's hard. And at one point in grade 7, I found out that someone at my school was going around saying that I was a fat pig. I'm in grade 7. I'm like 12, 13 years old. Do you know, it's so hard on people that are that young to be told that, oh, you're not appealing in any way. I don't want to be your friend because you're fat. And that was something that was literally said to me. And I thought that it would change when I got to high school. It didn't. Throughout high school, it was a bit more concealed, I guess you could say, just because there's so many people in high school, right? No one's really going to pinpoint one person, whereas in elementary school, you're in more closed space. In my elementary school, in our graduating class of grade 7, there was like 30 of us, if that. Whereas by the time I graduated high school, there was hundreds of us. So, through high school, for a while, it was okay. And then it wasn't. Depression is something that you can think is gone, but it's actually underneath the surface, and it's just waiting for something to trigger, and it will spark back up. And for me, it's never gone away. Unfortunately, it got to the point where I started to self-harm. And I started self-harming when I was in elementary school. I self-harmed from grade 7 all the way through until grade 10. Now, what's hard for me when I talk about that is the fact that I was so young. And you hear things like that in the news and it just shocks you. And it horrifies you because you don't want to think about these little children because that's exactly what you are. You don't want to think about how they're hurting themselves because they are so sad. But that's the reality of it. And by the time I reached grade 10, I had been put into a program at my high school that was essentially for not necessarily people with problems per se, but for people that were maybe struggling for whatever reason. I know, I was struggling several reasons, partly because of my depression, but also because I have ADHD and attentive type. And I also have a non-cognitive learning disability, which relates a lot to spaces, and essentially, I can't draw worth shit. Like, I can draw stick figures, that's about it. So I was placed into that program for those 3 things. There were also some people that had, reading difficulties, or, it was a handful of things I don't want to say because I don't really know. But when I was placed into that program, things seemingly got a little bit better. I stopped self-harming, mainly because of the help that I got through therapists and through my parents, my mom. And then, grade 10 was a good year for me. I made friends. I wasn't feeling alone anymore. Unfortunately, by the end of grade 10, I found out that my father had stage 4 lung cancer. And suddenly I was dealing with a whole new set of emotions. When you have stage 4 any cancer, it's essentially meaning that you don't have long to live. we were given the option for him to go through radiation. We were also told that it may not work. It was very stressful. We were essentially living day to day, not knowing what was going to happen. And I'm so incredibly grateful, but he's still here to this day. His cancer is now in remission, which is wonderful. And I don't really want to talk a lot about that because that's his business. But as you can imagine, that put me into a spiral. And it was really, really hard. I thought that he wouldn't be here for my graduation. That he wouldn't see me get married. He wouldn't, there was all these things that run through your mind. Thankfully, he is still here. But as someone who has been dealing with depression for so long in their life, it was just another thing to add to the list. After I graduated high school, things were good. Things were fine. They weren't horrible. I went on living life. But every once in a while, and even to this day, there are things that can trigger your depression and can make it very, very bad. As of today, I still have depression, and I also have a very strong case of anxiety. Thankfully, I am on medication for both of those things, and it's helping. But not everyone has the ability to get the medication that they need, or go to therapy like I did, or have outlets like I did. And it was a very long battle for me, over a decade, and I'm still battling with it. But I was able to get some kind of help, and that's what's important, is being able to talk to someone, being able to vent your frustrations, vent how you're feeling, let someone know. Because if you don't, it's going to eat you up every single day. To the point where you can harm yourself. To the point where, unfortunately, some people pass away from it. And that's not the solution. We need to talk about mental awareness. We need to talk to our friends, our family. We can't let this eat us up, because if it does, it can kill you. And it can also kill your family. It's hard to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. And I hope that personally, by me sharing this, that some people will understand. You do need to talk about it, and maybe someone will reach out, whether it's they reach out to me or they reach out to their family. I just hope that someone hears their voice, because someone has heard mine. And I hope that that'll help. So, today, January 27th, is Bell Let's Talk Day. And I sincerely hope that you do.